Hope and History: The Journey of Barack Obama, read and published by Mr. Books. Barack Obama's name illuminates an epical shift in American consciousness, a fusion of audacious hope and the slow beats of history. His journey from the mosaic of his multicultural childhood to the highest office in the land represents more than individual triumph. It embodies the potential and contradictions of the American experiment itself. Hope and History: The Journey of Barack Obama invites readers to walk the corridors of this remarkable life, tracing the arc from the modest halls of Honolulu to the grand domes of Washington. DCTHI's book is not a mere chronicle of Obama's ascent, but an exploration of the forces and moments that shaped him. It examines how history's weight and hope's beckoning operated in tandem, guiding, testing, and sometimes colliding as Obama navigated private struggles and public demands. Whether as a young man weaving between continents, a community organizer, galvanizing neighborhoods bruised by neglect, or as a president confronting seismic economic and social shocks, Obama's narrative is inseparable from the times he helped to define. At its heart, this story is about a search for belonging and purpose. It is about a man negotiating identity, black and white, American and global, pragmatist and dreamer. The early experiences that seeded his vision, the mentors and adversaries that honed his character, and the ideals he carried forward formed a tapestry uniquely suited for our fractured age. His election as America's first black president did not signal an end to its struggles with race, division, or disparity, but it did mark a moment when millions believed anew in the better angels of our nature. Through hope, Obama inspired a movement. Through history, he provided context. His oratory stirred souls, but his leadership demanded endurance when easy answers would not suffice. This book peels back the grand slogans and glossy images to reveal the person beneath. Reflective yet decisive, optimistic yet wary, skilled at balancing promise with pragmatism. As you progress through these pages, you'll find more than a biography. You'll witness the convergence of collective dreams and complicated realities. You'll encounter the choices that defined a leader and the ripples his journey sent through the world. The journey of Barack Obama offers not just a window into a singular life, but a mirror inviting us all to consider how hope and history intertwine in our narratives. Let us begin. Before we dive in, make sure to subscribe and hit that like button to support the channel, and don't forget to turn on the notification bell so you never miss an audiobook that could change your life. Now, let's begin. Enjoy. Chapter 1: Roots of Promise. The Early Life of Barack Obama. Barack Obama's early life forms the bedrock of his evolving perspective, a tapestry of cultures, questions, and contradictions. Born on August 4, 1961, in Honolulu, Hawaii, Obama's story begins at the crossroads of continents. His mother, Ann Dunham, hailed from Kansas. His father, Barack Obama Sr., came from Kenya. This union, itself a radical act in an era still marked by anti-miscegenation laws in much of America, set Barack's life on an extraordinary path of self-discovery and negotiation. Obama's Hawaiian childhood was at once ordinary and exceptional. Sun-baked streets became his playground. Yet, ahead of him stretched a journey vastly different from those of his classmates. Hawaii's diverse society provided some buffer against America's harsher racial lines, but young Barack still felt the pangs of identity, hardly black enough, never fully white, and always aware of an invisible line he must toe. His mother, Anne, imbued him with intellectual curiosity and a sense of wonder about the wider world. Her ideals and unwavering belief in empathy, hard work, and justice settled deep within him. Anne's anthropological pursuits and social activism exposed Barack to a kaleidoscope of ideas. Barack Obama Sr., though largely absent after the marriage dissolved, left an indelible mark of aspiration, an image more mythic than personal. Later, Obama would recall the stories told of his father with equal measures of longing and skepticism, attempting to reconcile the legend from Kenya with the reality of life in Hawaii. After his father's departure, young Obama was raised by his mother and his grandparents Stanley and Madeline Dunham, whom he called Toot and Gramps. Their modest apartment and working-class ethos gave him a sense of grounding. Gramps' tales of the Great Depression and World War II, Toot's determined ascent in the banking world, despite the glass ceilings faced by women, all seeded in Obama a growing awareness of the broader societal struggles and the dignity of life. Persistence. At age 6, fate relocated Obama to Indonesia, where his mother remarried and the family settled in Jakarta. The Indonesian years were formative and sometimes fraught. Obama attended local schools, experienced both privilege and hardship, saw the lush beauty of a new land, and confronted the daily reminders of poverty and political uncertainty. He witnessed firsthand the disparities between those with means and those without, between stability and upheaval. Anne Dunham's commitment to service led her to work with grassroots microfinance organizations in Indonesia, teaching Obama long before he set foot in Chicago that the greatest acts of hope often sprout from the grimmest soil. From his stepfather, Lolo Soetoro, Obama absorbed lessons in adaptability and the pragmatism needed to survive in a country buffeted by new regimes and shifting fortunes. Returning to Hawaii in his adolescence, Barack found himself again at this confluence of worlds, attending the prestigious Palehu School on scholarship. There, he navigated academic expectations alongside a deepening sense of not quite fitting in. He retreated at times into basketball courts and the company of a close circle of friends who similarly sought belonging among differences. He read widely, thought deeply, and in solitude wrestled with the legacy of his father and the demands of his ambitions. A trip to Los Angeles for college marked another inflection point. Occidental College was a springboard into activism, debate, and his first tentative steps into political engagement. Later, at Columbia University, Obama honed his intellect further, immersing himself in the study of political structures and the machinery of justice. The questions of identity, what it meant to be a Black American, an outsider, and an inheritor of so many histories, remained, but they now coalesced into a clearer sense of purpose. These early years were years of seeking, absorbing, and becoming. They not only prepared Barack Obama for his eventual role on the world stage, they made that ascent possible. The roots of promise sown in these formative decades would blossom into a vision that inspired millions. In Barack Obama's early journey, we witness the alchemy of hope forged amid uncertainty, a prelude to the greater chapters yet to unfold. Chapter 2. From Chicago streets to Senate halls. After gaining his degree from Columbia University, Barack Obama's journey could have followed familiar corridors of ambition: Wall Street, academia, or governmental agencies. Instead, he made a decision that would define his future and reshape his outlook. He moved to Chicago. There, he found not only his calling, but also the crucible in which his ideals were hardened, challenged, and ultimately transformed. Chicago in the 1980s was a city of paradox, vibrant yet scarred by racial tensions, economic inequalities, and neighborhoods left behind by waves of industrial decline. For many, its South Side represented the starkest contrasts between the American promise and its betrayals. Into this landscape, Obama ventured as a community organizer, working with church groups and grassroots leaders, striving to reverse decades of neglect. As a community organizer, Obama was young, untested, and sometimes uncertain of his authority. Organization and patience became his weapons. The problems he encountered were not abstractions, but urgent realities. Closed factories, jobless families, foreclosed homes, and the persistent ache of powerless communities seeking change. Obama learned the limits of idealism without a coalition. the frustrations of bureaucracy, and the slow pace at which hope, when planted, could grow. He spent his days walking from door to door, attending church basement meetings, and listening more than talking. The work was slow. The victories like securing job training programs or the removal of asbestos from public housing modest but meaningful. With every setback, he witnessed the stubborn resilience of those he served. It was here, in the church, pews and union halls, that Obama honed his empathy, listening for the stories beneath the statistics, the humanity behind policy debates. But he also discovered his limitations. Sometimes, even the best intentions foundered on institutional inertia. Churches he worked with clashed over tactics. Progress faltered without consensus. These experiences humbled Obama and toughened his resolve, teaching him that real leadership requires both collaboration and compromise. It was in this crucible that Obama's political philosophy began to crystallize. He realized the importance of bringing people together across divides, of forging unlikely alliances, and finding common ground where none seemed to exist. Chicago years also introduced him to injustice as a lived experience, not an academic theory. From frustrated mothers, worried about crime, to factory workers idled after layoffs, he saw how government could fail its people, and how, with vision and persistence, that failure could be remedied. Obama's desire to grasp the legal machinery that shaped his surroundings led him to Harvard Law School. There, he became the first black president of the prestigious Harvard Law Review, a triumph both personal and symbolic. Success at Harvard validated his intellectual gifts, but also exposed him to the drifting tides of expectation, as classmates went on to lucrative legal careers, while Obama weighed a return to activism and public service. Returning to Chicago after law school, he focused on civil rights law and teaching at the University of Chicago, deepening his commitment to grassroots engagement. His marriage to Michelle Robinson, a formidable attorney and strategic thinker, further anchored his resolve. Together, they crafted a life defined by service, sacrifice, and the shared rhythms of urban struggle and promise. Obama's first run for political office was not a resounding success. He lost a congressional bid against incumbent Bobby Rush in 2000. Yet, the defeats taught as much as the wins. From each failed attempt and every unexpected roadblock, Obama learned endurance and adaptability. These setbacks sharpened his political skills, preparing him for the next leap, state politics. Elected to the Illinois State Senate in 1996, Obama brought his emphasis on listening and coalition building into the formal arena of governance. He advanced issues of healthcare reform, ethics, and poverty alleviation. In Springfield, as in Chicago's neighborhoods, Obama preferred patience and persuasion to grandstanding. He built coalitions with Republicans on campaign finance reform and criminal justice, earning a reputation for both pragmatism and principle. Yet, beyond the legislative victories, it was the cadence of community life that continued to inspire him. Through the merging of street-level activism and legislative work, Obama developed a framework for leadership that would serve him well in national politics. Start with hope, proceed with realism, and build with unity. His journey from Chicago's battered avenues to the marble halls of state power marked not only a rise in stature, but a transformation in vision. The lessons learned in church basements and Senate debates fused within him, creating a leader immeasurably shaped by both hardship and hope. The journey was far from over, but a profound foundation had been laid. Chapter 3: Kindling Hope, the 2008 Presidential Campaign. By the mid-2000s, Barack Obama's blend of idealism and pragmatism, forged in the fires of Chicago activism and state governance, had caught national attention. His keynote address at the 2004 Democratic National Convention electrified audiences across the country with a message that transcended the usual divides. There is not a liberal America and a conservative America. There is the United States of America. That speech did not just showcase Obama's rhetorical gifts. It marked the emergence of a new political force, a voice echoing the nation's longing for unity. After years of war and division, the decision to run for president in 2008 was audacious. America was still reeling from the aftermath of 9/11s, embroiled in unpopular wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, and devastated by a financial crisis that threatened the economic security of millions. The growing dissatisfaction with the status quo, coupled with a yearning for change, opened the door for an outsider. Obama's candidacy was a gamble against historical odds, a freshman senator challenging a figure as established as Hillary Clinton for the Democratic nomination. Obama's campaign began not with certainty, but with conviction. At Springfield's old state capitol, where Abraham Lincoln once spoke, he launched his bid with a call not just for new policies, but for a new politics. The phrase, "Yes, we can," borrowed from the rhythms of organizing in Chicago, became a rallying cry for all those who felt marginalized or left out of the American story. Grassroots energy powered Obama's campaign from the start. Leveraging the internet, his team pioneered digital organizing, fundraising, and social media engagement on an unprecedented scale. Emails, blogs, and texts drew in millions, igniting the imagination of young voters and those previously untouched by politics. Volunteers flooded field offices from Iowa to South Carolina, propelled by a sense of personal stake in the campaign's outcome. The Democratic primary was fiercely contested. In debates and on the campaign trail, Obama and Clinton clashed on healthcare, foreign policy, and experience. Clinton's formidable network and name recognition made her the favorite, but Obama's message of hope and his methodical campaign operation gradually shifted momentum in his favor. Key moments such as his win in Iowa, a state with a tiny African-American population, signaled that his appeal cut across old demographic lines. Racial undertones came to the fore as the campaign gained steam. Controversy swirled after clips of Reverend Jeremiah Wright, Obama's former pastor, surfaced in the media. Obama's response, a measured speech on race in Philadelphia, did not deflect from the issue, but confronted it head-on. He spoke candidly about America's history, the wounds that had not healed, and the promise of working together toward a more perfect union. The speech proved transforming, quieting critics and reinforcing Obama's commitment to substantive dialogue over political theater. As the battle with Clinton waged on, Obama's campaign built a coalition that was racially, generationally, and ideologically diverse. Young voters, minorities, independents, and even some Republican crossovers galvanized around his candidacy. "Yes, we can" evolved into more than a slogan. It became a belief that American politics could transcend its stale divisions. On the Republican side, John McCain emerged as the nominee. The general election was marked by fierce debates over the economy, national security, and the meaning of change itself. McCain's choice of Alaska Governor Sarah Palin as his running mate injected unpredictability into the race. But it was the collapse of Lehman Brothers and the resulting financial meltdown that turned voter attention squarely on leadership and vision. Obama's calm temperament, his grasp of policy, and his plea for unity resonated deeply in a climate of fear and uncertainty. His campaign never strayed from its themes of hope and change, but it also communicated detailed plans for economic recovery, healthcare, and foreign policy reform. Crowds of unprecedented size gathered to see him speak from Berlin's victory column to Denver's stadium-clad Democratic Convention. Election night, November 4, 2008, was itself historic. As the results came in, the nation watched as state after state fell into Obama's column, culminating in the words, "Barack Obama elected president." Spontaneous celebrations erupted from Harlem to Honolulu, from Atlanta to Chicago's Grant Park. where Obama addressed a jubilant crowd with humility and resolve. His victory was not just his own. It was a collective breakthrough, one that for millions symbolized a reckoning with history's burdens and a reaffirmation of hope's power. Obama's 2008 campaign was about more than winning an election. It was about lighting a flame that, even in times of darkness, could not be extinguished. The journey ahead would test that flame, but for one transformative season, hope proved unstoppable. Chapter 4. Breaking Barriers. A Historic Election. The night of November 4th, 2008, remains stamped indelibly in the collective memory of a world transfixed by the heartbeat of American democracy. That night, against the silhouette of Chicago's Grant Park, a city that had once echoed with the cries for civil rights, a nation bore witness to history unfolding before their eyes. Barack Obama, the son of a Kenyan father and a Kansan mother, rose to the highest office in the United States, shattering centuries-old barriers and opening new corridors of possibility. The months leading to this historic election had been a relentless marathon, a campaign powered by the dreams of ordinary Americans and steered with relentless discipline. Obama's vision of "Yes, we can" became not merely a slogan, but a clarion call that resonated through bustling cities and quiet towns. The victory was not Obama's alone. It was a narrative woven from the hopes and struggles of countless people, a coalition as diverse as the nation itself. As the campaign gathered momentum, the magnitude of the stakes became clear. With economic recession tightening its grip, 2 wars raging abroad, and a pervasive sense of uncertainty, Americans longed for change. Obama's message was both timeless and timely, a blend of hope, unity, and rational optimism steeped in the nation's founding ideals. Through countless debates, town hall meetings, and whistle-stop tours, Obama faced both inspiring supporters and fierce detractors. Questions about his experience, his heritage, and whether America was truly ready for a black president loomed over every rally and media encounter. He responded with measured eloquence, steering debates to the urgent needs facing everyday families: jobs, healthcare, education, and dignity. But it was not just Obama's words that galvanized the country. It was the movement that grew around him. Volunteers poured into campaign offices, knocking on doors, making phone calls, and organizing local events. Grassroots fundraising democratized campaign contributions. The internet, newly ascendant, allowed for the rapid spread of messages and organization. For millions, political engagement became a personal charge, a first taste of agency in shaping their country's future. On Election Day, lines formed at polling stations before dawn, spiraling onto sidewalks and around city blocks. Turnout surged to historic highs, particularly among young voters, African Americans, and marginalized communities who felt, perhaps for the first time, that their participation truly mattered. The result, a decisive victory, as the electoral map painted itself in shades of blue and red, with enough blue to send a shockwave of possibility not only through the United States, but across the globe. As Obama took the podium before a sea of cheering supporters, his voice bore both triumph and humility. If there is anyone out there who still doubts that America is a place where all things are possible, he began, "Tonight is your answer." In those words, a door swung open. The election of Barack Obama was a moment that transcended politics. It was a marker in the chronicle of human progress. Yet, the significance of that night did not erase the reality of the mountains to climb. The challenges awaiting President Obama were immense, and the expectations even higher. The promise of his victory was not a destination, but the beginning of a journey toward a more just and inclusive America. For billions around the world watching live broadcasts, Barack Obama's election delivered a surge of hope that democracy could evolve, could heal, redefine, and remake itself in the image of its ideals. For many Americans, it rekindled belief in the country's founding promise. The barriers for a night seemed surmountable. History, for a moment, joined hands with hope. But as dawn approached on November 5th, the real work of governance had only just begun. The campaign's poetry had to give way to the prose of leadership. The story of breaking barriers has now turned to the harder challenge of building bridges, not just of rhetoric, but of policy, compassion, and action. Barack Obama's election remains a testament that history, however rooted in struggle, can be upended by hope, and that the barriers once thought insurmountable can fall under the weight of a united, determined people. The journey from candidate to president was complete. The journey of fulfilling the promise of that night had just begun. Chapter 5. Governing in Times of Crisis. Barack Obama's presidency was born in a crucible of crisis and defined by his responses to unprecedented challenges. The rhythm of hope, so central to his campaign, was immediately checked by the shattering reality of America's worst economic collapse since the Great Depression. The nation watched as banks shuttered, millions lost jobs, homes vanished in foreclosure, and faith in the future waned. The dawn of Obama's first term was marked by urgency. Before he took office, the economy was shedding over 700,000 jobs a month. The auto industry, once the proud engine of American ingenuity, teetered on the brink of collapse. Wall Street, greed-fueled and largely unregulated for years, had led the country to the edge of the abyss. Obama inherited not just a broken economy, but also an electorate fractured by fear, anger, and disappointment. It was in these dark days that the new president and his team crafted the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act, a sweeping $787 billion stimulus package. The bill was designed to inject lifeblood into a broken economy. Infrastructure repairs, clean energy investment, tax relief, and desperately needed relief for the unemployed. At the heart of the effort was a belief in the power of government, not as a bureaucracy, but as a force for stability and progress. Crisis compounded crisis. As economic anxiety continued, an outbreak of H1N1 threatened public health, testing the administration's capacity for national crisis management. Abroad, America's image struggled after years of war and diplomatic estrangement. In Afghanistan and Iraq, service members continued to risk their lives, and Obama was determined to craft a new strategy for disengagement, balancing the demands of security with a steadfast promise to bring troops home. Throughout these tribulations, the president relied heavily on the counsel of a tight-knit cabinet: Vice President Joe Biden, Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, and a host of capable advisors. Decisions were made in the Oval Office amidst a cacophony of competing interests, often with little historical precedent to guide them. The passage of the Affordable Care Act would become another proving ground. Dubbed Obamacare by both detractors and supporters, the bill aimed to extend health care to millions, tackling an issue that had confounded presidents for generations. It was a legislative war fought street by street, precinct by precinct. Its passage, a tribute to perseverance, but also a window into the ferocious partisanship gripping Washington. Through each crisis, Obama remained guided by a calm resilience, an analytical approach rooted in his days as a community organizer. He listened, weighed, and oftentimes agonized, but ultimately he acted steered by the enduring belief that America's greatest strength was its capacity to renew itself, to rise from adversity stronger than before. Those years would shape his legacy and offer unforgettable lessons on the true burden of leadership. That in the corridors of power, the right decision is often the hardest, and that history's gaze is both unyielding and surprisingly human in its judgment. Chapter 6. Against the Tide. Challenges and Opposition. Despite the promise and hope of his historic inauguration, Barack Obama's presidency soon encountered formidable resistance. The honeymoon was short-lived. The realities of partisan Washington and a divided American public quickly replaced the euphoria of January 2009. Not much of the opposition was rooted in ideology. For many, Obama's ambitious stimulus plan, auto industry bailout, and especially his efforts to reform healthcare represented an unacceptable expansion of the government's role in society. The Republican Party, newly invigorated by the emergence of the Tea Party, mounted an aggressive, near-unified resistance. Town halls across America erupted into angry shouting matches. The right's media machine amplified outrage, sometimes blurring the line between criticism and caricature. The challenges weren't confined to Congress. In 2010, the Supreme Court's Citizens United decision further polarized the political landscape, unleashing a torrent of untraceable money into campaigns. This new normal of never-ending election cycles and negative advertising made genuine compromise all but impossible. Even within his party, Obama faced skepticism from progressives frustrated by perceived half-measures and centrists worried about overreach. Yet, opposition made the administration more nimble, forcing creative solutions and unorthodox alliances. The Affordable Care Act's survival despite over 50 repeal attempts became a testament to dogged determination and procedural finesse. Regulatory efforts, like the Clean Power Plan and Dodd-Frank, navigated a maze of legal and political obstacles, sometimes watered down, but still managing to leave a mark. External crises further complicated governance. The Deepwater Horizon oil spill tested federal disaster response. The rise of ISIS in the Middle East challenged foreign policy assumptions. Obama's doctrine measured, multilateral, cautious was sometimes praised for its restraint, sometimes condemned as indecision. Perhaps most personally, Obama faced an opposition that transcended policy. The birther movement, openly questioning his legitimacy, revealed how race, nativism, and conspiracy could be weaponized in the age of social media. Despite the slings and arrows, Obama met most attacks with an unruffled composure, choosing not to descend into bitterness, but to keep his eyes lifted above the immediate storm. Ultimately, the opposition helped define Obama's years in office. It forced him to balance principle with pragmatism, to innovate in strategy and messaging, and to double down on the very hope that launched his rise. In adversity, Obama discovered not just the limits of presidential power, but also its possibilities. Art of the possible played out on a stage as volatile and unpredictable as any in American history. Chapter 7. Legacy in the Making. Achievements and Impact. With every presidency, questions linger about legacy. For Barack Obama, the arc of achievement was defined both by sweeping reforms and incremental progress accomplishments forged in hard-fought battles, fierce opposition, and the inescapable weight of expectation. Foremost among his domestic achievements was healthcare reform. The Affordable Care Act, imperfect but transformational, expanded access to millions who had previously been left out of the system. Pre-existing condition protections, the expansion of Medicaid, and the creation of insurance marketplaces became foundational for a generation of Americans. Despite relentless legal and legislative attacks, its core provisions endured, becoming, over time, not a battleground, but a baseline for future policymakers. Economic recovery, though uneven, was undeniable. The auto industry rebounded. Financial reforms curbed some of Wall Street's excesses, and over 15 million jobs were added during Obama's tenure. Confidence, shaken by crisis, gradually returned. Initiatives on clean energy and climate change, though stymied by Congress, were groundbreaking. From the Paris Climate Agreement to the first meaningful steps toward lowering emissions, Obama's impact went beyond policy. Across his presidency, and reinforced by his First Lady, Michelle Obama, The White House became a symbol of inclusivity and possibility. Efforts to end "Don't Ask, Don't Tell," the support for marriage equality, and initiatives like My Brother's Keeper spoke to a broader, unfinished journey towards justice and equity. On the world stage, Obama's diplomatic achievements were equally notable, re-establishing ties with Cuba, signing nuclear agreements with Iran, and efforts to end combat missions in Iraq and Afghanistan. Yet, his realism about America's place in the world also meant decisiveness when necessary. The daring raid that ended Osama bin Laden's life marked one such moment. But legacies, like presidents, are complicated. Not every promise was met. Failures on gun control, immigration reform, the Syrian civil war reminded the country of the complexities of governance and the limits of even the most inspiring leader. The polarization that marked the end of his tenure served not to diminish his achievements, but to highlight the persistent, unfinished work required to bridge America's divides. Ultimately, Obama's legacy is that of a visionary pragmatist, leader who steered America through gale force winds, leaving behind not easy answers, but hard-won progress and a rekindled sense of what is possible when hope meets history. Chapter 8: Beyond the Presidency, Hope's Enduring Flame. As Barack Obama left the White House on a cold January day in 2017, questions swirled about what remained of Hope's audacity. Would the legacy he built withstand the coming storms? Could his vision inspire beyond the granite columns of government, beyond the polarized rhetoric that defined his final years? Yet, if the arc of Obama's journey reveals anything, it is that hope is rarely extinguished. Instead, it flickers, sometimes boldly, sometimes gently, but always present, guiding those willing to carry the torch forward. Out of office, Obama resisted the lure of the conventional ex-presidency. He became, instead, a mentor, author, and citizen advocate. Through the Obama Foundation, he championed opportunities for young leaders from Southside Chicago to South Africa, encouraging the very civic engagement that nurtured his rise. His memoir, A Promised Land, offered not just a retrospective, but a blueprint, honest, thoughtful, and bracingly candid. Michelle Obama, too, emerged as a singular voice, her memoir and advocacy electrifying a new generation. Events during and after his presidency, rising populism, attacks on democratic norms, resurgent nationalism posed profound challenges. Yet Obama's measured presence, persistent optimism, and strategic engagement provided a steady anchor for those dismayed by the global turn toward division and cynicism. He remained, above all, a believer in the long game that change is slow, often incomplete, and always dependent on the energy of new activists, new voters, new dreamers. Whether addressing crowds in Berlin, students in Chicago, activists in Johannesburg, Obama's message was clear. Hope is not naive. It is essential. History, he contended, is something to be bent by those audacious enough to care. Obama's post-presidency stands as a living testament to the flame that began in his youth. It is not the flame of solitary greatness, but a light shared, illuminating path forward for any willing to step into the arena. In the end, his journey offers an unending invitation to believe in change, to work for justice, and to let hope and history guide us all into the unknown promise of tomorrow. Before we dive in, make sure to subscribe and hit that like button to support the channel, and don't forget to turn on the notification bell so you never miss an audiobook that could change your life. Now, let's begin. Enjoy.